Welcome everybody. This is an event put together by Byproduct. We are asking the question today, is product management broken? What is Byproduct? Some of you may already know, may be part of the community, but for those who are new and have just seen us on Eventbrite, we're a Slack-based community, 20 members now, and the idea around it is for experienced and product leadership to share their experiences, so we can kind of see what's going on in product and kind of move the needle forward a little bit, rather than going over things hypothetically, or sometimes a lot of presentations seem to be around what success looks like rather than what went wrong, and that's usually where we learn the most. So that's one of the things that we've been really good at over the last couple of years. We've had a lot of people sharing their views on things, their experiences. We're open to everyone. It's free. We do fairly regular events. We're quite Berlin centric, so if you're in Berlin, every now and again we do meetups for drinks and things like that. But yeah, everyone's welcome, and if anybody wants to join and doesn't know necessarily how to, you'll get an email out at the end of this, and feel free to find me on LinkedIn. My name is Mike Dwyer. I work at AmSource. I'm not too hard to find.
There's a link on Facebook.
Who's the team? That's me. Nikhil, he's one of the co-founders. He is a product lead at Quanto now, so that needs updating. Charlie usually helps us. He's on leave today, so Ethan is doing all the fun stuff like making sure this recording happens. Today's hosts, Andrew Sheehy is a Senior Director of Product Management. What he hasn't seen or done in product management is probably not worth knowing about. And David is the Head of Product at Virtual Identity, has a very successful website, blog, is all over Medium, and he is also one of the signatories of the Agile Product Manifesto. Did I get that right way around, David?
Yep. Thank you.
So, both very much about pushing product forward, asking hard questions to make sure that we're all going in the right direction and innovating. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. All I would ask is, of those who have joined us, if you could just mute your mics. If you've got questions throughout, please use the chat function. We will be opening this up towards the latter 20 minutes. We're going to try and keep this to an hour. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Andrew and David. Over to you guys.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. I've got a little bit of echo coming through. Has everyone got their mic off? Okay. Yeah, the internal room problem here. Okay, so yeah, this is going to be fun. Let's just get straight into it. This is all about the question is product management broken? I guess the first question, David, has got to be, how would you answer that question in the simplest possible way? Could be yes, could be no, could be a little bit of a narrative, but just to sort of get the ball rolling and to work out, what page you're on, where you are on the book, or even what library you're in. How would you sort of answer that question? Is product management broken? What is your opinion?
Well, it depends what we see in the market, but my opinion is quite strong. So I think many teams are not doing product management. They are doing something different than that. I call it bullshit management. And what I see is like teams are sometimes trapped, and I have noticed many teams like focusing on output over outcome, meeting deadlines over embracing the unknown. Also, teams like the maximizing features instead of creating value. And also what I realize is many teams don't realize they are even trapped. They think it's fine. We're delivering more, increasing our speed, velocity, stakeholders are happy. In the short term, we're pleasing them. Their request is in the backlog. Our backlog has hundreds of items, some of them 2 years old, but it doesn't matter. It's all there, it's all good. So everyone is happy. But that's not product management, because product management is about doing what is right for the end users, creating value for business on all sides. And unfortunately, I think that we are trapped. And in short, for me, is like product teams are different than feature factories. And that is where we have the opportunity of challenging the status quo. And yeah, I would say product management is not even present, is worse than broken. It's not even present in many scenarios.
Wow, that is pretty strong. I mean, the concept of broken, I mean, in software, you know, words and definition and language are really quite important to be clear about. But the concept of broken, you know, means it's quite a dark concept. You know, like you imagine a vase breaking on the floor, it's in pieces, that you're never going to get it back to the way it was before. It's always going to have cracks in it. It's always going to be damaged in some way. So I guess that is a bit of a dark, but you know, formulation. But I suppose you could imagine that in a certain sort of appropriate workshop, you could get it back to the point where it's working properly again. So do you think product management is fixable, or is it permanently going to be challenged? Is it permanently going to be broken to some level?
There was some echo. I think you were asking if product management is feasible, possible.
No. I'm asking whether it's actually fixable, or whether
fixable,
complete, if it's repairable, fixable, correctable, or whether it's always going to have with it some element of brokenness. You know, what do you think?
I think it's fixable, but it's a journey. And the very first step to be fixed is to step back and evaluate the scenario. And for that, you need to understand what are the ingredients that would lead to a successful product management approach. And when teams and organizations have the humility to do that, because that takes a lot of humility to step back and say, what are we doing wrong? You can ask this question, what are we doing wrong? And then pick one aspect and say, let's change this for a different perspective. But it is, and here I want to be really strong. It is a journey. It will take years. Let's imagine a company that is used to create prescriptive roadmaps, yearly roadmaps. Everything is defined up front and the teams have to follow that. That's it. The very first step would be to create a roadmap that is focused, for example, on the outcome. And then the teams can figure out how to create solutions. I would try to fix this part first. And then after we go on how to improve the discovery process and so on and everything else. But start with one, change that, and then you can go. And what is not going to fix product management or agility or anything is bringing a framework and say, we have all the events and ceremonies and artifacts roles implemented and deployed. That is not going to fix anything. So if a company says, we are moving from our traditional way to Agile, and now we are using LAS or whatever framework it is, that doesn't mean anything. You need to change the mental models, and that takes a while. So if companies are willing to go on a journey, yes, it's fixable.
Okay, this is a great answer. Perhaps we could just elevate a bit, having got going, and go to something which is close to my heart, and I've kind of struggled to understand for some years. What is the one thing, not the 10 things, the one thing, if you had to sum it up, that product management does, the specific USP, the specific functional accountability that product management must do, that no other function in the company does? marketing doesn't do. We know marketing's primarily about communicating. That finance doesn't do, which is primarily about managing the money in the bank and raising money. That engineering doesn't do. What one thing is product management doing that no one else does? I mean, how would we define that or answer that question? Do you think it's a hard question? So, you know,
I think it's starting with the very important aspect, which is identifying problems that are worth solving. So solid product management will uncover these problems and have the narrative for that. So they will know how to share with the, let's say, developers, why is it important to solve this? What do we want to achieve? They will know how to shape the narrative to help leadership understand the benefit of solving that and creating value for the business as well. And they craft the narrative, identify problems that are worth solving, and know how to help the others understand the benefit of this, and leading teams to solve. So the very first and most important is uncovering these problems, I would say.
So it's a good answer, and it's one that I have heard before, but how would you, or how would we as a profession explain that accountability, if that's the one that we're picking, with the accountability of the C-suite or the startup entrepreneur or the chief innovation officer, or indeed the CTO, all of whom might think, well, that's my job, that's what I do. Product management is meant to be building. How do we kind of explain that no, this is actually what product management does, and this is why only product management can do this?
Yeah, I think this is a challenging one because it depends on the setup of the company. Because if you're talking to a startup, it might be that the CEO was the founder and he was the product manager before, because he or she uncovered the problem and then led that to be solved, and now the company is on a scale up moment. But if you take a giant corporation, can be that this person has no relation to the end user whatsoever. So it depends. But what I think is trying to shift the mindset, help them understand the importance. The C-suite and the leadership, they're critical for the business, of course. But what is the key on this? Because the main point is the leadership is not the one like calling all the shots, but the leadership is the one creating the environment where great ideas can happen. So what is this environment? Product management should help them understand. And one of the ways I like saying is, for me, the C-suite or leadership, they are the venture capitalists. They will define where we want to get and invest gradually. And then the teams will get evidence to justify that it's worth continuously investing in this. So they would set the, let's say, the playing field. Where are we playing? What are the game conditions? We are playing in this sector and our ambitions is to reach that. So they set these and then they define the investment. And the product manager has to figure out whether it's worth investing on that or not and bring evidence to justify more investment. So we shift from leadership tells us what to do and we deliver that no matter what, to leadership tells us where to go and then we help them get there. So we strengthen it's leading by context. So they help us understanding the context and the playing field, and then we can get there. Because why is it important? Because the leadership is farther to the end users than the product managers. Product managers are closer to the real end users, and then we would be a better fit to uncover how to implement the solutions that matters for these users.
So just to sort of paraphrase what I think you've said, what I think you're saying is that the senior management would set some sort of high level framework, a box, if you will. In other words, we're in this industry, not in that industry. We have this amount of money, not this amount of money, things like that. And the key accountability within a situation like that of product management is to bring qualified business opportunities, product-based business opportunities to the leadership, and then get them funded, and then execute from very early on in the discovery process right through to the point where it's deployed and successful in a growing product.
Yes.
Is that kind of a summary of, okay. So that's good. Now, okay, so on that basis, and if we kind of go forward with that as our working assumption, and that's now the USP of the product management function, then do you think that product management could ever become a professional practice, like engineering is, or like accounting is, or like even marketing is, where when you mention the word product management, people will know, oh, that's what you do, understand that's the one thing you do, or do you think it's always going to be very difficult to get it to the point where it's accepted on a sort of almost level playing field basis with all of the other corporate functions? So you'll always see a product management function in a tech company, for instance.
Yeah, I think this is regarding to the maturity of the company and so on, because many times, like, the job has to be done, but what happens is like the responsibilities are shared with different people, and sometimes in a blurry way, who is doing what when. What I think that can be professionalized and can become clear is the essence, like what is the responsibility of a product manager, and then you figure out how to live up to that. I wouldn't be adamant on the process, on the how level, but on the accountability, that can be quite clear. And when that happens, it becomes easier for everyone. So you know who is accountable for what. And don't get me wrong, because accountability means a heavy burden on the shoulders. Because what I have seen also is some product managers moving from output orientation to outcome. They almost, they get overwhelmed quite easily, because then it changes. So you are accountable for the end result, and it's not for following a roadmap and delivering features anymore. So I think it is possible to get to a more professional level, but I'm not sure if all organizations would be willing to change this and adapt, because there's always something like, it is good, I understand, but it doesn't adapt, in our scenario, wouldn't work. So that's what I hear quite often. It's a resistance to the new. So that is what makes it harder. So sometimes you need to make some trade-offs and say, the product manager here will have not a full responsibility, but can gain responsibility over time, because trust is not something that is a given, as well as empowerment. Once you build a relationship, you start gaining trust and then empowerment, and then you can increase your level of responsibility.
Do you think that goes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier about professionalism, about skills? I mean, if we take your USP as a starting point, in order to execute on that, one needs to have a certain level of competence with, financial analysis. You've got to know what ROI is, you've got to know what cash flow is, you have to know how to read a balance sheet, you have to be able to go to an SEC 10K and understand what it all means, in order to prepare a business projection, like a financial sample P&L or something like that, which you could then pitch to CFO or something like that. You have to have some competence in marketing. And you need to know what a brand is. You need to know what brand positioning is. So you're starting to sort of, in order to execute on this, we need product people that have competencies in these areas. So if we're thinking about professionalism, that suggests, does it not, training and accreditation and even examinations? I'm talking about in the far future, not today, but on a going forward basis. How are we going to deliver the quality that we need to actually execute on the USP that we've just been talking about, do you think?
Yeah, that's quite interesting. I haven't thought so far on that. Like, for now, I am skeptical about certificates and badges. The reason I am skeptical about it is what is happening in the market. You look, we have the professional Scrum product owner and the certified Scrum product owner from Scrum Org and Scrum Alliance. Not to say about other ones that I don't consider, but there are many. And it's so easy to get certificate, super easy. And then what happens is the market say, if you have the badge as a professional Scrum product owner, it means I can hire you. It's a misunderstanding. And then they hire someone. So
that's not a, if I may, that's not a professional qualification. That's not an accreditation. That's just, that's a participation award, like all the kids go to a running event and they'll get a medal for participating. That is of no value. What's of value is for example, attending a 3-month course on marketing. That's an example, and actually having to do coursework and to sit in a 3-hour examination and actually to get a distinction with a reputable training provider. Now that is a significant commitment in your time, and you're not going to get a guaranteed pass. You might even fail. So then it becomes valuable. But then again, is that really the message that we want to be sending to people, that really to convert product management into an actual profession that's going to be taken seriously and can deliver on that USP? You actually need to put in some hard yards, and you just can't learn things by reading stuff on Medium and LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. What I'm seeing is like the biggest challenge is not with the product managers. I see many product managers willing to learn and trying to do many different things and getting exchange with other mentors and trying to do impact. I don't see resistance there, and I even see people grow. But where I see a need of support is in the C-suite and the company. How do you help a company moving from a fixed mindset to growth mindset? Here is where I think something needs to happen. And the reason I'm skeptical about accreditations and so on is how valuable that is. Our market is constantly changing and so on. And I think nothing will replace the hands-on experience, but it's how people can grow on this. It is a super challenging role, as you said. It touches marketing, it touches engineering, it touches design, it touches user experience, also business. So in many aspects, so you can be trained on that, but doesn't prove you can still do the job. So
of course, that's right. I mean, I'm just thinking of my engineering days. In the UK, there used to be the IEEE, which is a kind of equivalent to the IEEE. I think the IEEE is now the IET. I'm a member of it, by the way. But back in the day, to become a member of the IEEE, you used to have to actually submit your professional experience. You needed about 5 years minimum in a job. You needed a degree. You needed 2 or 3 members to sort of certify you before you even could, your application would be considered. So this is actually quite a high stat. I think the standards have changed now, but it used to be quite a high bar, and actually it really meant something. It wasn't just that you could pass exams or you had attended some course. You actually needed to demonstrate that you could actually be an engineer. You understood engineering, and I'm wondering whether it's a huge step from where we are now, but can we foresee a time in the future when we'll have something like that for product management that will be comparable to an accounting qualification or a member of the marketing institute or something like that, which is not just, it's multiple levels above a simple participation award. I mean, how do we feel about that? Is it aspirational or terrifying?
I think it's more terrifying as I see right now. For now, I'm thinking like, how do we move from feature factories to value driven at this very moment? So I'm starting thinking like at this very moment, what could help the teams right now? I've just read some comments here. In Germany, we cannot do that because 80% of the companies are more on sales driven. So I'm worried of questions of right now. I know that this is what you're thinking is more on scalability and I'm thinking at this moment, what could help teams? So I'm more like, which insights could encourage team to step back and reflect and start challenging the status quo and changing from whatever they are doing to something more related to creating value faster. So I'm missing more challenging than acceptance. My fear on this training and accrediting and so on, it's a long shot. So I'm thinking right now, how can we help the teams that are trapped at this moment?
So we need some short-term to-dos. So we need to identify the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, the low-hanging fruit, I think. It is like in a companies, you need to have to put your attention on low-hanging fruits and put energy there, and also look a little bit to the bats. I see this one would be a bat, what you mentioned, and can make sense. I haven't even thought about it, but maybe yeah. But there might be some low-hanging fruits that would help teams right now.
So one of those might be what you have been working on with some colleagues, some fellow product leaders, which is the Agile Product Manifesto, which is closely modeled on the Manifesto for Agile software development. This is for those who don't know, I'm sure most people do, but it's a set of values and principles which are intended, I think, to help guide the work of product people working at the coal face. I mean, do you see that as a low-hanging fruit? In other words, something that we've identified that we needed to have a set of values and some principles. We now have that, and is that going to help, do you think, at the working level?
I think that is actionable, and the reason we created that is like the Agile Manifesto was created by developers for developers, and it was created 20 years ago, and the challenges we face now are just different. 20 years ago, we struggled to deliver software that has quality. And if you look into one of the principles, there was like working software is the primary measure of progress, something like this. And now working software cannot ensure progress. You can deliver software and that may not solve anything at all. And I think that the manifesto was good for the industry. It helped like bring the essence up and think individuals and collaboration over process and tools. Okay, let's step back and ensure that we are collaborating and not creating more processes to ensure that we are not failing. So there was the essence. And the reason I created this is because I worked in many companies, in total 7 companies. I worked like within product, and I had worked in other 3 companies as a software developer. And I noticed more or less the same thing in all places. And then I thought in the beginning that I was the problem. I thought I'm stupid. And then I started talking to more people. I realized that the same pain I suffered, more people suffered. And then I joined with other product leaders, and I exchanged with them. And then we said, what helped us during our journey? And then we start sharing stories, and we try to grasp the essence of these stories, real experience. And then we created the manifesto. We created that within product experience for product people. And what we believe is this is not a process, it's not a recipe for success. It's something that you step back and then you look at the principles. For example, simplicity over perfection. Where do we stand? Are we in the perfection side or simplicity? Maybe we can do something different. And looking at the principles, like for example, when we say here, creating value for end users and business is what defines success. And we just ask the question, how do we define success? Might be surprised. And you say, we define success by meeting deadlines. Does it make sense? So challenging the status quo, and I don't mean to overwhelm anyone. I think pick one thing that hurts you and then start challenging and figure out how to do better. And I wouldn't recommend any framework, but just the reflection. And I think that could help teams uncover opportunities to change, at least to start conversations and start challenging. Because I see right now, what scares me is many teams put themselves as victims. It is what it is. that's defined, we cannot challenge the status quo. That's not nice. You cannot be the victim of your circumstances. You should be the hero of your story. You should take action. Don't sit on the passenger seat. Move to the driver's seat and start trying things. And that is the reason we created the product manifesto, the Agile product manifesto, to encourage people to be more, let's say, annoying, be a little bit more rebel than a rule follower.
Pretty good. That's a superb perspective. David, thanks very much on that. I can see that we're on the half hour now, and wondering, Mike, whether we want to move into the second half of the segment where we can perhaps look at some of the questions that have been put into the chat and widen this into more of a discussion.
Yeah, unless you've got something really juicy up your sleeve to see if we can get David on the ropes. I thought you might have one of those questions.
Well, I have a few of those, but I'm too much of a gentleman.
Politician's answer.
I
think there's been a lot of interesting points raised, and people are obviously contributing in the chat. So yeah, I mean, if we want to revisit some of these questions, and I think it will open up the floor. I mean, the whole thing here is we're all having quite a frank conversation about where product management is maybe not going the way product managers would want to go. And I suppose my question is it product managers to solve, or is it for businesses to solve, or is it somewhere in the middle? Because my observation with product management, being in the role that I am, product managers, you all know what the job is, and then everyone else seems to really struggle to grasp what it is that you guys do. I think that's one of the big problems. And I guess the question is, how do you change that? How do you explain what product management is and what value it brings to the business, and instead of just being a delivery function?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good point. I mean, I was talking to someone last week. This person was doing some consultancy for this particular company. It's a German company, software company. And the product management team reports into the CTO. And all they do really is project management. So what sort of message are we sending to product managers in a company like that? There is zero possibility that they're going to be able to deliver on the USP that David articulated earlier, because they're doing a technology focused, that they use SAFe, by the way, but don't have kind of a damaged version of SAFe, if you can imagine something like that. So I guess, is it not actually quite similar to Agile? The original theory behind the Agile Manifesto was a set of values and principles that engineers and a small engineering team could use, as David said, to help them with their daily work. You're just taking stock, having a think, have we got too much documentation? Are we talking to people enough? Have we got the balance right? Just have a little bit of a check as you go along. If you're not sure, conduct an experiment, get some data. Is it better? Is it worse? That's really what Agile was originally all about. And I think maybe on the product side, people in an environment like that, where they're reporting into the CTO, maybe they're not empowered and capable of, redefining the role, but they can make some small improvements. As David was saying, find the low-hanging fruit. Find something that's actionable that you can do, that you are empowered to do. Don't try and take, a giant leap to the next level, when you just have to take one step to get a little bit better at doing something very specific. So, but that's quite a complicated thing to explain to people.
Yeah. In the chat, Renee made an interesting point around, particularly in Germany, the size of the businesses and the challenges there. I don't know if you read that particular question, David or Andrew.
should I elaborate a little bit more on what
Yeah,
I mean?
Rene, just get straight from the horse's mouth. Yeah, here he is.
Nice to meet you guys. I'm following you, David, on LinkedIn, so I'm quite familiar with what you're doing. I really like it. But I did quite some investigation as I'm a consultant now, and I build up my own approach for product consultancy. And the thing is that I was so into product management and said we have to do product. It's the only thing to do. But I realized in the meantime that for most of the companies, product is not beneficial. Yeah, because they have country organizations who have sales responsibilities, and you have the sales and marketing teams, and you're selling products that are not your own in e-commerce and all these kind of things. And there are a lot of companies out there like this. So if they embrace parts of the product, that will work. But actual pure product management will not work in those companies. There, the delivery works because this is what the tech teams and the product teams and these kind of things have to do. And you have to find the balance of when a PO or a PM is in the company and they managing or they bringing tech teams and delivery into life, they can embrace some of the principles like doing discovery with the functional teams maybe of marketing and loyalty and all the guys, but pure product will never work in those companies. Pure product will work in startups, in product-led companies and all these kind of things. And for there, this is the core business. But if you look into the companies that move now into digitalization, like most of the companies do, you have to support them to find their way to benefit from the things that we do in product. Yeah, like discovery, how to organize a tech delivery, how to be able or how to dare to test things, right, and put the user into the center. They are buying the stuffs. These principles are super valuable, but you have to bring them in homeopathic doses into the companies to ensure the acceptance there. Yeah, and this is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, it depends on the level of the company. If the company is coming from a very traditional, solid sales organization mindset and so on, the journey will be longer. So that's what I imagine. And I have seen many companies saying that's how we are organized, and the product will be product is treated as a support area. So they don't drive the business. And it can be, if they want to go in a transformation, it will be a step by step. And I think it is identifying what is the first thing we could do and starting small and doing that with a smaller team, saying like, instead of changing how everything is done, take one team and say, what if this team could be an empowered team? And then they will talk to the end users and uncover what are the opportunities and implement the discovery, go from end to end and drop some solutions because they don't work and see the value that they can bring to the organization and then help them understand. What I see many times as like companies are afraid of the big change because they say that's not going to work and so on, and then they stick to their old guns, so to say. But then they are just endangering themselves because what might have brought them here, there's no guarantee it will get them any further. And there are many examples in the industry or companies said that's how we are not changing. Nokia did that, Kodak did that, and we all know what happened with them, and there are more. So the thing is, are they willing to do a small experiment and learn from the experiment? And then maybe that help them see the world a little bit differently and then start changing.
I think it's very good. I mean, I'd like to sort of go to what Rene was saying about the example of companies that, sales and marketing led companies, perhaps, where you didn't, Rene, say this, but I think you're kind of getting the message across that the management doesn't really see a value added for product. But if we go back to what David was articulating earlier, and we summarize this USP concept where product management is within the bounds, framework set by senior management, it brings qualified business opportunities to the C-suite. Product-led business, not a project for a customer. That's not product management, but an actual product opportunity. Could be moving into a new market, could be sort of expanding an existing market. These are product opportunities, revenue generating, incremental cash flow things that any C-suite would want to know about. It could be a small amount of money, could be a large amount of money. Surely that is going to be valuable in any company.
What about in a small business, in a startup, where the C-suite is the founder or the founding team, and their idea is that, they think is a great idea. They don't necessarily need or want another business opportunity. You see time and time again with startups, they fail, for whatever reason, or they waste a lot of money building the wrong things because they never once checked, is anyone actually going to buy this? Does anyone want this? They have the idea, they've been backed, and that's where you get these product people who have to just execute what the founder's vision is. So, how do you get those people on board and show them the value of it?
Yeah, but my experience of that, I've got a little bit on the startup side of it, and on the venture capital side, is that, the investors have invested in the leadership team. It's the only thing in the early days that you can invest in. It's some ideas and some people. Do you believe that people are telling you is right? And do you believe in their vision? It's all sort of smoke and mirrors in the early stages. And so you are betting that this team, this small team, has what it takes to convert this load of paper into an actual, money, ultimately some money coming into a bank account. Now, if another party that's unknown comes in, called a product manager, and starts challenging the management team on, what they have sold to the investors, then that's going to be a big conflict situation, unless it's handled very delicately by a senior level person. But the product people that are coming in are going to be realistically doing execution, but that's not really product management. So really they should be bringing in a project manager, a technical project manager, to actually execute the build. End of story. So I think Mike, you're right. It's always going to be a delicate one. When the company gets 20, 30, 40, 50 employees, then things change.
Yeah, and one thing that I learned from a startup is to make the intangible tangible. Because what is easy to happen with founders is to fall in love with the solution instead of the problem. So the founders have an idea and then they fall in love with that and they want that idea, that solution to be implemented. And that is a trap when you go to this. But if you have a product manager who could help, like delivering a solution based on evidence, what happens? Many people speak about discovery, but sometimes I think the discovery is like just having an interview with the client, and then if the client shows interest in buying, it means the client will buy, and then implement the solution. But the discovery is something incremental. You start small with something that gives you a weak evidence, but it gives you a hint on the direction to go, and then you start investing more to build more, to build stronger evidence. And what am I talking about? To give an example, when I was in Brazil, I joined a startup, and it was I searched for this experience. I was working on a giant corporation, 100,000 people, and I was just tired of that. I said, I want to see something different. And then I moved to a startup with 10 people. I said, let's see how it is. It was chaotic, super chaotic, but we had one problem we want to solve. The founder said, the second-hand car market in Brazil sucks. It's bureaucratic and it's full of frauds and scams. We want to solve that. Easy to understand, and it's true. That was the problem. And the belief was, the value proposition was, we sell your car in 1.5 hours. That was what we want to do. You bring your car to us, and then we inspect your car, put in an auction platform, and car dealers all over Brazil will bid for your car. And then you get an offer. You either go home by cab with cash in the bank, or you just turn it down and go home, pay nothing. That was the business model. And what we did, there was nothing when I joined there. Nothing existed. And what we did was we started with some interviews and some surveys. We got evidence. Yeah, some people want to join, car dealers want to buy, but to build this platform would be too costly. And we need to do a test. And we did our MVP. And our MVP, you know what was? We put the website live, a landing page, and with the schedule. And the schedule would go to a Google Docs. And and then we would just call the person and ensure the person would show up with the car and would go to the place where we were. We would take pictures, and that we would send on a WhatsApp group and get car dealers in this WhatsApp group and try to make them, convince them to buy the car. We just wanted to see if someone would really buy the car. And out of 50 car dealers that said they would buy, in our first test, only 2 placed bids. All the others, no, I'm not gonna place bid. But we learned many things. But it took us like just a couple of days to put a landing page live and test and learn from evidence. But we were always thinking on the problem we wanted to solve and figuring out which solution we would implement. And that was the way, because the founders, they were open for that. But it was interesting because the investors were not so open. They were pressuring for a solution, for a plan and so on. And I said, well, the plan is to collect evidence and to find a solution. For now, we know what we want to achieve, but how we're going to get there, we have no idea. So we are going to do many tests, and then we will keep you updated. So we said we simply don't know. And it took us around a month of several tests to figure out which solution we could implement. And then we implemented the solution, a better version, and tested with the audience. And that's how we came to the thing. But it was not one experiment. I think we had around 10 or something like 10 or 12 experiments before implementing the solution.
Cool. So I don't know if anyone else has any more questions. I hope I say this right. Doishin, you seem to be contributing quite a lot. I don't know if you've got anything that you want to ask David or Andrew directly. Not putting you on the spot or anything.
Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate that. I should hope that I'm not putting out too much noise into the discussion. It's just that I've always felt the gap, at least in my own experience, between the actual pricing methodologies and what the actual product is. Hence, one of the questions. And the other ones were pretty much about maybe structure, because I've always tried to back up my statements with, let's put it that way, data-driven decisions. So in this case, it's very, I mean, I wouldn't even know how to categorize this question, but how can we prove that we are actually successful? Because in most companies, we prove by increasing revenue, and this is not always the case. And one very simple example might be addressing technical debt. So, okay, I'll stop right here. And thanks very much for this webinar. It's really great opportunity to learn from you guys.
Yeah, thanks to Mike for putting it on. I agree. I mean, I can perhaps say a few words about that. The technical debt. So it's a whole topic, a whole call talking about, you know, this technical debt stuff and other things. There's various different categories of debt. There's actually product debt, for example, which is products that kind of zombie products. They are consuming a lot of internal resources to support throwing up bugs. They're caught up in some release cycle, which continually generates incremental testing. But these products are either unprofitable, they're not growing, they should just be killed. But people don't do it. There's product debt, there's commitment debt. You know, there's in a B2B situation, you know, you might have situations where for whatever reason, things have been committed to customers that should never have been committed. Or they've been committed prematurely, where we don't have a clarity on costs, and there isn't a proper commercial understanding for how we're going to deliver this functionality to the customer. So there's all sorts of different categories of debt, and technical debt is one of them. But on that particular one, I actually think that's an engineering bucket. So the way I've always sort of conceived it is in product, there are 4 and only 4 categories of work. Only 4. 1, innovation. That's what David was talking about earlier. These are big bets on new markets. You know, 2, new products. 3, new features. So that's sort of a, level 1, level 2, level 3. So innovation, new products, features, and finally the 4th one is custom things, which are not relevant for some businesses. And each of these has a completely different system for managing it from a product perspective. But the other things, all the debt stuff, unless it's product debt or UX debt, it's actually in the engineering wheelhouse, and just let them get on with it. So it's every hour you spend dealing with technical debt, it is an hour you can't be spending, in my opinion, understanding customers, talking to end users, collecting data, conducting experiments, doing all the discovery stuff that Dave was talking about earlier. So, a little bit of a long answer to the question, but I think one has to be a little bit careful about the technical debt topic.
Yeah, and I want to bring also one perspective. Thanks, Andrew, for sharing your approach. And what I always have struggled with technical debt, and I realized that my struggle was because I didn't understand what technical debt was. It was simple like that. For me, it was like this. As a product owner or product manager, doesn't matter the title. I was almost always responsible from end to end, almost always. But what will happen? I come to a sprint planning, and then a developer would look at me. We need to address this technical debt, and then I say, why? Because if we don't do this, then that, and then it would go into the. And as a product manager, I wanted something else, and I didn't understand. And I realized the problem was my approach. And what I do right now is, when I want to test an idea, first I go into collecting evidence. And then once we are implementing the solution, the first thing I want to prove that the solution resonates with the end user. So the solution should be, make it work. So that is not scalable. We're gonna test that with a small percentage of our business, make it work. And then once it works, then we need to fix, because we will receive feedback, and then we fix. So make it deliver value, and then you scale. And then what I say is, in the moment you say make it work, you are like borrowing a lot of technical debt from the bank. It's like when you are taking a mortgage. You want a house, okay, you borrow money, you get a mortgage, and then you will pay off later. And then once you make it work and you prove this right, you need to scale that. And the moment you're going to scale, you will pay off the debt. And why do you need to pay off the debt? Like a house. Do you want to get a new house? It's better if you pay off the debt, because otherwise you will go bankrupt. The same happens. If you just leave the debt open and then you start another initiative, you accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. And this will lead to an unsustainable. So I say, first you borrow technical debt, make it work, make it valuable, and then make it scalable, and then pay off the debt before you start the next. And this is how I convince the others. So don't start a new initiative if you have technical debt open from that. But it's a mindful decision. It's clear from the beginning, we are going to create crap in terms of technical debt. And then after we are going to solve that. Why? Because if in the beginning we realize the crap is really crap, nobody needs that, we just throw it away. We don't even spend time making it scalable in the moment that should not be scalable.
Cool. So we're coming towards the near the end of the hour. If there are any more questions, please let us know what they are now. All quiet. Guess we've covered quite a lot. I have one question. In product management, who is the most important person? And not as in you, the product managers. Is it the user? Is it engineering? Is it the C-suite? Like, who is the most important person in the world of product management?
Who is the most important person?
Yep.
To the user.
Yeah, I agree completely. That's completely right.
Would you agree that is quite often forgotten?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about software, and I would, well, I have thought about this quite a lot, and I'm sure David has, most of the other people on this call have. I don't think there is a single software product out there that's not ultimately consumed by end users. Could be internal users in the company using some, I don't know, internal reporting tool, but they will be, you know, they will be users. Could be admins in some client organization using an interface, but they're still users. Could be consumers, could be marketing people. You know, there will be always end users. And I think one of the sort of most interesting and pleasurable parts of the role is, you know, when you have feedback from end users and you know you've delivered value to them. But of course, that rather depends on you having to clearly define your different user constituencies, because a particular product situation, you might have 2, 3, or 4 user groups, and they all have to be, the needs all have to be managed, you know, independently in parallel. So definitely users. If you're not delivering value to users, you've got no business.
Yeah, exactly. I think the same, and I tend to say products exist to make the road somehow a little bit better. And to make it a little bit better, need to improve the life of someone, helping someone get a job done. And it's very important to say the user has some characteristics, and we need to identify that, because it is not user is not everyone is a user, and you need to understand who the user is. And sometimes the trap is treating like the business stakeholders as the user, because then you end up delivering exactly what they want and not what the end user needs. So user is the key part of all products, and how you deal with understanding them and everything. That is what helps you be successful or not.
Do have a late comer. We've got one last question from Nikhil. Nikhil, do you want to?
Sure. Just kind of maybe it's covered before, right? Your thoughts on experimentation or prototyping or A/B testing in product management.
Well, so all of the above are necessary, but you have to sort of work out where you. Sometimes in product management, it's quite difficult to work out where the hell you are. You know, are we sort of like in discovery? Are we done with discovery? Are we building? Are we testing? Are we, you know, are we scaling? Are we not? You know, it kind of can be a little bit difficult to kind of orientate yourself. But the closer you are to the beginning, the more important are things like experimentation, talking to users, prototyping, and the sort of, you know, further you are down the track, the less important those things are, because the risk is concentrated in that front. Most of the reasons why these things fail, most projects fail and startups fail, is because people built things that didn't deliver value, or no one wanted, or no one needed. And that's really where the value of user discovery, user research, and experimentation, prototyping is concentrated to get the risk level down.
Initial impact, essentially. Initial impact.
Measure, quantify whether there's actually, you know, you're actually delivering value. And if you've actually made a mistake, get out early on, rather than actually waiting all the way until UAT, when you've actually spent a couple of $1 million and then you get feedback from users and there wasn't any. And that's sort of the old way of doing it. So what people like Teresa Torres are advocating, and I agree with her, in principle at least, is that you've got to get the discovery going early on. But even for a mature company, it's terribly important to put in place a proper discovery process. I mean, what we're doing on this project, we're doing now, we're talking to one user per day. And we're doing that in a highly structured way, very structured, recording videos, transcripts, key insights, documenting it all. And we're using those insights to make actual decisions. And it's an important one. We'll conduct some little market research. You know, we have a sort of an online service that we can use to actually run some actual surveys to quantify it, to check. We can use some internal research, external research. You know, we're investing a lot of time, but the amount of information and value of that at the early stage of the project is I wouldn't say it's priceless, but it's super important.
And to share just 2 thoughts on this. First, there are more methods for testing, and I think people consider like A/B testing as the only one. So if you look at testing business ideas, there are more than 40 ways of testing ideas. I think you need to think, what do you want to test? Are you testing desirability, viability, feasibility? What do you want to test? And then find the proper one. So this is the first thing. It's not only A/B test. A/B test is one of the methods. It's a good one, but you cannot use that as your silver bullet. That is not one size fits all. And the other is, many people want to validate assumptions, but that is just leading to confirmation bias. Sometimes we need to have a falsification mindset. What is going to go wrong? For example, if you are in e-commerce, you know that maybe on the checkout, there's a potential of clients messing up with the delivery address. So you have so instead of, you say, like, okay, so I want to create the prototype to falsify this. And then intentionally you created in the prototype, you put the wrong address there and the checkout summary, and you see if the user noticed. And if the user doesn't notice that, then it's not prominent enough. So you fix this, because if you don't fix that, it means you have problem with delivery later. So sometimes we need to have something, what is going to go wrong? Let's validate if this is as expected. So it's not only validating, it's also falsifying.
Agreed, absolutely right. Because we would like to validate our assumptions. Also, definitely the bias exists, right? More often than not, we're trying to validate our own assumptions for sure. And I read somewhere on LinkedIn, someone said that a landing page is the cheapest form of product experimentation. Do you think it's true?
No, I don't think so. There are many others that are even cheaper. Depends on the products.
How would you test like possibly like a new product? I mean,
yeah,
maybe testing
it depends what you want to test. Is it? Do you want to test if users would buy? Do you want to test if users desire the solution? What do you want to test? Because people say, I want to test an idea, but the question is not how do I test? Is what do you want to test? And I come with a how.
I think this is a very, very, I mean, again, this is a very expansive topic, but the question was, how do you test a new product? Now, we should ask ourselves, how do we define a product, which in itself is a very complex topic. Now, for me, a product is a user experience, because that's the only thing that's valuable. So what we're testing is our assumption that the user experience that we're envisaging will be better than the user's current experience. That's actually what we're testing. When you say test a product, this is very, very subtle, but it's very fundamental to understand. And this gets us to Melissa Perry's build trap. And one of the failings in product management today, as far as I can see it, is that people conceptualize a product as a pile of technology that you build. That's an engineering-centric view of product management. Right. So if you decouple yourself from that and move into the domain, into the end user domain, and think it's all about delivering value to users, depending on how you define the users, then the product is actually the behavioral change that we're trying to affect. That means a change in behavior on the user, means users have to do things differently to what they were doing before. And they're not going to do that unless it's in their interest. Then it gets very clear and very simple how we conduct experiments. We talk to the users and understand exactly what they're doing at the moment and find ways to improve that experience. And if we can't answer the question that way, we have to actually build prototypes. Simple, crude, elementary. There are phenomenally powerful tools that you can use to build things in days.
Especially at the moment with no code tools, right?
Exactly.
Anyone can start building products and get feedback, cost building product. But yeah, thank you, folks. Excellent. That was my question.
Cool. So we've just run over the hour point. So I think we've covered quite a lot. So I'll just share my screen really quickly. So thanks, Andrew and David, and everyone that's contributed. So what's next? Well, we're taking a break for summer. Had quite a busy year with events and things, so we will be back in September with something similar to this, but I think, Nikhil, you're taking point on that conversation, so that should be good. For those of you who aren't already, I would highly recommend following David on LinkedIn. Andrew, how's the podcast coming?
I'm a bit snowed over, whatever. Yeah,
There's
I've got a
little
little
bit- there's
podcast
some stuff
channel.
in there,
Yeah,
though.
you can find it on Apple and Spotify. I've got a couple of books up there, which I'm reviewing. Review a couple of books on Scrum, which if you're interested in Scrum, you can listen to probably two of the best books on Scrum. This is one about a personal summary of them. And I'm doing a little YouTube channel, but I've not worked on it for a while, where if you want to know about Agile and you're keen on knowing what Jim Copeland and Dave Thomas think all about Agile, there's some stuff on there as well. And if you search for Divergent Product, you'll find that.
Yep. Well, what we can do for those who've joined us today, we'll be able to share, well, not necessarily these slides because there's not much to them, but we'll definitely have the recording. We can share the links to your podcast, to David's own website. That's definitely worth checking out. We have our own SoundCloud, which has so far been around our future leaders stuff, but there's some really interesting stuff in there. And I did share the link to our sign up page. So those of you who haven't already signed up, I recommend that you sign up and join us in Slack, and we can carry on the conversation, and we advertise all the events and share all the links and all the good stuff that we've created so far. So thanks everyone for joining us. Especially thank you to Andrew
everyone.
and David for taking the time out to ask quite a loaded question. And I hope everyone's found this hour or so useful. And feedback always welcome. Your users are obviously the key to it all.
Amazing event, folks. Thank you all for joining.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
you for inviting. It was a pleasure.
Thanks. Bye.
See you all later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.